Hey everyone, Sam again. Welcome back to Wrestling with Catholicism. Today we're going to be going through part 3 of the Theology of the Body talks that I was able to give over the past 8 or 9 months at a local parish to the catechism class as they're preparing for confirmation. So we'll jump in part 3. If you have not seen part 1 and part 2, I highly recommend that you go take a look at those. I know this is going to be a little bit longer, so if you don't have time to watch a full talk right now, bookmark it, save it, send it to yourself, something where you know how to go back to this and watch it when you have more time. Let me share my screen here. Make sure that everything is good to go, and here we go. So, today's talk, does God make mistakes? Are you a flawed creation? Were you given the wrong body? Right, before I jump in, I want to address that there are 2 responses that often come up when people talk about hot button topics or kind of these more personal topics. And one that we'll address today is transgenderism. There are the logical response and the emotional response. And it's not that one is better than the other, one is worse than the other. It's just 2 different responses that simultaneously come up. Because right now I'm giving a talk, which is addressed to a larger, broader audience. It's not as personal. I'm addressing the logical response first, and then at the end, I'll talk about the emotional response and how we have to respond to the responses, I guess. But when we put this knowledge into practice in our day-to-day lives with individuals, we have to lead with that emotional response to break down the barriers that are built to show others that we love them and we truly care about them. And once we care about them and they know that we care about them, that's when we can start to bring in the logical response. Be like, okay, you already know that I care about you. You already know I love you. I care about you so much that I'm willing to tell you some of these hard truths that society is too afraid to tell you. So just kind of leading with that, I think it would be beneficial to stay and listen to the whole thing rather than just bits and pieces, because the first part and the second part of this talk kind of complement each other, and without full understanding of the whole thing, it might be able to take it out of context and go kind of the wrong direction with this. So if you don't have time to watch the whole thing now, that's fine. Just bookmark it and come back to it later. But let's get started. So we believe in God, but do we believe God? We may believe that God exists, but do we believe and trust that He loves us, that He truly desires our happiness, and that He has given us guidelines on how to live to become fulfilled in this life and the next? Do we believe that He loves others in this same way? It's okay to struggle with teachings of the church, and I would actually say that it's a good thing to question them, but it's bad when you start doubting. So questioning and searching for the answer, seeking the deeper root which these teachings stem from, is going to bring you to a deeper understanding and a deeper appreciation for your faith. You're actually going to grow in faith by questioning these things and seeking the answers, because the answers are out there waiting for you. But if you just kind of question these things and never pursue the answer, you just kind of question them like, okay, I don't know if there's an answer out there. There might be, there might not be. That starts to turn into a seed of doubt. And as that seed of doubt grows, it drives a wedge between you and between God. And today we're going to be talking about, again, a controversial topic. So don't lean away because it's uncomfortable. Rather, join me and seek truth so that you and I can be strengthened in our faith. Relativism and its impact on our view of creation. Relativism is kind of where all of this stems from, so we have to address what that is first. Relativism is the belief that all things, including truth, are relative to the relationship of the observer. So, for example, I don't have any blocks with me right now, but imagine I had a block, okay, maybe 2 that are the same size. I hold it close to you and one far from you. The closer that block is to you, the larger that block is going to appear. The further away it is, the smaller that block is going to appear. But the block doesn't change sizes based on where it is in relation to the observer. The observer's perception of it is what's changing. So the block here in this analogy is representing truth. And our different perceptions of truth can often lead us to come to different conclusions, but truth itself, like the blocks weren't both large and small at the same time. The block's size did not change. Truth is unchanging based on our perception of it or our ability to basically handle it and deal with it, even if it's hard. So truth remains unchanging. The idea of relativism is that we sort of create our own truth rather than discover existing truth. So again, in this example, it's not the people seeing the blocks creating the blocks. The blocks are already there and the people are merely observing them. So truth is truth. Truth is not something that we create, but rather it's something we uncover and discover. Truth is unchanging, and that very principle is what allows people to disagree with me. So anyone disagreeing with me saying like I'm wrong, truth is not absolute, truth is relative, by their own worldview, if their truth is their truth and my truth is my truth, they can't tell me my truth is wrong, even if my truth is that they are wrong, right? To have any ground to stand on to disagree with someone, you need to have a basis, this idea that truth is truth, truth is unchanging, truth is absolute. Now, what is truth? I think you're wrong, and I think I'm right. So now let's see where truth actually is, not who created a better truth. Relativism has also begun to affect the way that people view themselves and the way we view creation. In our culture today, many people are saying things like, well, I feel like a woman, and that feeling or my perception of what a woman would feel like is what actually makes me a woman, regardless of the biological necessity of female reproductive organs. Rather than grounding truth in unchanging facts, like reproductive organs or the pairing of either XX or XY sex chromosomes that exist in every single somatic cell in the human body, truth becomes rooted on feelings and emotions, which we know change multiple times a day. So I kind of brought this up, but what then would a man be? What would a woman be if it's not just someone who feels that way or identifies that way? When God created humankind, he created us body and soul, and he created us male or he created us female. He found each and every one of us to be very good. So this is important to kind of stop here and think about this again. I talked about it in the first talk, but the first 5 days of creation, God created everything for that day, found it to be good, and then night came, and then the next day. But on the sixth day after he created humans, he found us to be very good. Right? Better than all creation, not just generally, humans are pretty good, they're intelligent, they're going to come up with a lot of technology and things like that, but individually, personally, we were all found to be very good, body and soul, not just one or the other. Today, there's a debate about the qualifications for what a man and a woman actually are, so let's clear this up. A man is somebody with a male body and any personality. A woman is someone with a female body and any personality, not vice versa. It's not the personality that determines the biology, but the biology determines the truth, and the personality can fit into that. We shouldn't have these rigid roles of if you're going to be a man, you have to do these things. If you're going to be a woman, you have to do these things. And if you don't fit into those gender roles, then it's your biology that's wrong. No, it's the gender roles that are wrong. And the same people trying to encourage transitioning to fit into the gender roles, if they fit into gender roles that might not be their associated with their biological sex, the same people who claim that stereotypes and gender roles and patriarchy, all of that's bad, are the same people who are encouraging others to transition to fit into these roles more. But the Christian view is that it's precisely because of the goodness, and we were created and found to be very good, body and soul. The Christian idea is opposed to this because we want to affirm that good, and God does not make mistakes. You are not born in the wrong body. You are created good. There is a deeper wound. There's something else going on, some underlying issue that's surfacing in that way. We want to help treat that. We don't want to just slap a Band-Aid on it and say, well, if you feel like this, then go do that, and then magically it'll all go away. There's something else deeper going on that's preventing you from seeing how good and how beautiful you actually are. So we want to help you to come to see that, rather than just say, okay, well, whatever, you can just go be part of a different group because the biology doesn't matter. Because we'll see in a little bit here that that's not a good approach. So war on truth. Why is there this confusion in the first place? Well, this is really just for the preservation of masculine and feminine gender roles at the cost of the individuals who are struggling with their body image. And again, this preservation of these roles are by the same people who claim to be removing barriers for women and dismantling patriarchy and all of this stuff. At the root of all of this, it's a spiritual war. It's an attack on truth. Truth is one of the three transcendentals of God. So God's three transcendentals, we have goodness, truth, and beauty. So if we look everywhere in creation, we can see that things are good, we can see that things are beautiful, and we can know things to be true. All of these are kind of on a scale, like, for example, truth, things can be kind of partially true. Parts of things can be true and parts are untrue. So there's kind of the scale. The more true something is, the more closely it resembles something that is most true, or truth itself, right? Same thing with goodness. Something can be more or less good. So it's on a scale of resembling that which is most good, or goodness itself, versus that which is the absence of good, which would be evil, and beauty, right? Same thing with that. So the three transcendentals, so God is truth itself, goodness itself, and beauty itself. So this is a war on one of those three big qualities of God. The end goal of the spiritual war on truth is it's twofold, all right? The separation, the first one, the separation of the body and the soul, all right? The complete separation of our interior person versus the physical body or the object that we exist in, all right? These objects just become a means for pleasure, and our moral compass becomes pleasure and pain. So then the separation of the body and the soul, we objectify each other and basically just seek worldly pleasures through our body to gratify our interior person. So that's kind of the end result that one is heading towards, right? Our body, our biology doesn't matter. When in truth we are created body and soul, we are both together and they are both good. The other is to create a deep-seated distrust of others and overconfidence in ourselves. As we create our own truth, nobody can tell us that we're wrong because we know that we created our own truth, so we have to be right. But we can't trust anyone else because we're not on the same grounds of truth. They created their truth. We're basically living in different realities at that point, and we don't know what they're going to do. It's less predictable, so there's less trust, less relationship between each other, and we're just seeing each other as physical means of pleasure. It's sort of the far off end result that this is heading towards, and has been heading towards for quite some time. Right? And the Christian response to this is no, there is absolute truth. We should all be basically grounded in truth, and we are created body and soul, and both are good, and both ought to be cherished and loved. All right, so is our approach consistent? This isn't even coming from like a Christian level or a religious level in any sort of sense. This is just like person relationships, medical help. Is our approach consistent? So we have gender dysphoria, which is a very real mental health issue where people struggle identifying with the biological sex they're at, which is what leads them to transition. BIID, body identity integrity disorder, and then anorexia. So these aren't necessarily associated with sex roles or anything like that, any of that external pressure that might encourage someone to transition. But we'll see that all of these are different means of body dysmorphia. So not being comfortable with some part of your body, not identifying with some part of your body. So gender dysphoria, let's talk about that one first. How do we approach this? Oftentimes this is approached with what's called affirmative care. Affirmative care is just affirming what the patient is saying, what they are feeling, what they are thinking as correct and as true. Like, yeah, you're right. You should keep exploring this. You should keep going further down this path and then see what you think and feel about that later. And this is under the assumption that they'll discover or create their own truth down the road and eventually become happy with the truth that they've created for themselves. This is why children are put on puberty blockers, which can cause irreversible damage to their body development. And if these children go down this road and realize, okay, the deeper underlying issue that I thought would be solved by this, right? By going down this road, I thought it would all kind of go away and it would all be better. That deeper underlying issue's not treated and it starts to come back up. And they're like, okay, maybe this wasn't the right move. And they start looking at options maybe of going back, and they realize detransitioning is actually harder than transitioning was. There was some irreversible damage from puberty blockers and hormones they were put on, so they can start to go back, but they can't go all the way back to what they naturally were going to be. And all of the support from the community encouraging them to go from their biological sex to become transgender, a lot of that support is taken away. They don't want these detransition stories to come out of people saying like, nope, that was wrong. They don't want to encourage them to go back and to keep exploring that way, even though many of them want to, right? And if you think that I'm just kind of making this up, go on really any platform and look up detransitioner testimonies. You'll hear stories from a lot of people who are courageously speaking out about this kind of thing, right? But unfortunately, some of them look for different ways out. Okay, it's hard. They're not feeling the support going back. They were already there. They didn't feel love. They didn't identify with their body, so they don't think that's the right way. They put all their eggs in one basket. They transitioned, and now they're still not comfortable with themselves. And suicide rates are 4 times more likely among members of the LGBT community. That's a horrific statistic. Where culture affirms, with affirmative care, it affirms their alienation from their own body and encourages their mental health issues, rather than preaching to them about how good they actually are and trying to treat the underlying issues to help them see the good that they are. It just says, okay, you don't feel comfortable in your own body. Maybe that's because you're in the wrong body. Not, you are beautiful, you are created good. How can I help you see that? All right, let's talk about, so that's affirmative care. That's our approach to gender dysphoria currently. What about body identity integrity disorder, or BIID? So this is where, like, I might come into the doctor and say, like, doctor, this hand on my body, it's not my hand. I don't know whose hand it is. I don't identify with it. I think it's somebody else's. I need it removed. I need it amputated. I cannot have this on my body. I cannot live like this. So the doctor is going to check my hand, and he sees that it's perfectly fine. In fact, it is biologically my hand. There's nothing wrong with it. There's just something wrong with my mental connection, my identity, identifying with this part of my body. So I ask him for an amputation. He checks it out. It's perfectly fine, healthy, working. There's nothing wrong with it. If the doctor amputates my arm, they lose their medical license. So if they operate on biologically perfect, healthy limb, they lose their license. Instead, what they do is refer me to a psychiatrist or psychologist who can help treat the deeper wound, right? The wound in my heart, the mental disorder that is preventing me from identifying with this limb of my body, which is in fact good and fully functioning, and nothing's wrong with it. All right, last one, anorexia. If I am severely underweight and malnourished, but I look in the mirror and I think I'm fat, I think I'm obese, I can't handle the way I look, I think I'm repulsive and disgusting, Most people will clearly see that this is unhealthy. What affirmative care in this situation would do is affirm that, yeah, you are fat, and then encourage me to eat less and maybe go on diet pills to speed up the process and exercise excessively until I come to a body that I actually like and I am happy with, and that's my real body. However, doctors do not direct anorexic patients to take diet pills and to stop eating and work out excessively. They direct them to seek mental health to treat the deeper underlying wound, which is just surfacing in this way. All right, so I think that here we can see that our approach is shamefully inconsistent when it comes to gender dysphoria, and it's not fair to these children and teens and even adults who are struggling with this. It's not fair to them that we're inconsistent about this. But how should we approach this and other hard topics in our day-to-day lives? Well, first, we must always lead with charity. This means that our love and compassion must always come first. Christ does not want us to win an argument, even if we think that we are winning it for his sake. This will not only drive people further away from him and make it more challenging for his love to reach them, but by strictly trying to win arguments, you're actually working against God's efforts to reveal himself to that person. Rather, God desires to work through you to reveal his love to that person and to win over the whole person, not to win an argument and lose the soul. The goal of our conversations should be a better understanding of each other, not a one-upping of each other. So when you enter into a conversation, you should be trying to understand that person's story, where they come from, their perspective on truth. Not what their truth is, but their perspective, how they came there, because then from that point, you can have a productive conversation with them. If you're listening to them, trying to get to know them, they know that you actually care about them more than you care about just winning an argument or the conversation. But it goes both ways. So it's something in a conversation you can say, like, hey, like, I just want to hear more about your story. Would you want to hear more about mine? And that kind of just little sentence like that at the beginning of a conversation can kind of set the tone of like, okay, this is what we're actually doing. It's a good conversation. We're learning about each other. We're not going to get in an argument right now. Then later down the road, you can bring in the logical kind of answers and questions. But it's also important to keep in mind that people struggling with their body image, they don't feel comfortable in their own skin. It means they never feel comfortable, right? They're always in their own skin. Our body and souls are united. That's what makes us human, but they are not okay with that. So this is a huge cross to carry, and a cross that if we were carrying it would crush many of us beneath the weight of it. We have to remember their pain, put aside our own pride, and try to help them see how good they truly are. Another important point is that we don't just stop there, right? It's not just one conversation where we talk to them, we show them like, yeah, we actually do care about them. And then we have maybe a second conversation. Okay, like, this is what I believe the truth is, and I respect you enough and I care about you enough to show you this truth. But then even if we convince them of that, convince them like, yeah, God loves me, God created me this way for a reason and it's good, but then we just walk away. So even if we convince them of that, we leave them feeling lost and stranded with nowhere to go, because when they go back home, they're going to the same environment, the same culture that's pushing them down this road in the first place. So they feel lost, they feel trapped. They know they don't want to go down this road anymore, but they don't know where else to go. So oftentimes they might just keep going. Instead, we must act like Simon and help them carry this cross. We have to walk with them in the light of faith. We can't just kind of have one conversation and check out. But if this is someone maybe in your class, someone in your neighborhood, someone at work, we have to continue this relationship. We have to grow closer to them and help lead them towards Christ, to help see the good that they are created for and the love that Christ has for them. It's not just kind of a one and done. We did our job as Christians. We have to walk with them through this. And I know topics like these are hard, And a lot of us want to turn away, and a lot of us want to kind of put this to the side and say, okay, this is someone else's job. This isn't mine. But to fulfill our duty as Christians, to be lights of the world, to be the salt of the earth, we must learn how we can help these people. We have to lean into this topic. We have to have conversations with people. Okay. Kind of at this point is when the high schoolers that I was giving the talk to, they would start breaking into small groups. They would start talking about, a lot of it's their personal stories. We invited them to bring their stories, what they see at school, what they see in their neighborhoods, what they see at home, what they hear from their parents, bringing all of this kind of to the table, talking about it, kind of seeing their own identity. Do you struggle with loving yourself? Are there parts of your body that you wish were different? Do you feel like you're a flawed creation? Or do you say that God created you who you are for a reason and you are beautiful? So kind of those major two things. Does God make mistakes? Right? And then how do we help with our stories? How do we bring stories into this to help walk with others? All right. Thank you again for staying and watching. This was part 3. Part 4 of 4 will be out hopefully in the near future and posted. So thank you again if you've been following along. If you've been watching, I hope that this is helpful. Please leave a like or a comment if you found this helpful. Share this with someone who you think needs to hear this. And go be lights and stay